Hello, welcome to the conversation here on News Central Television. This is the program where we bring you all the latest updates and political happenings around the continent of Africa. I am Benga Aboroa. Today on the conversation, we will be looking at the development in Tunisia as they vote in a new controversial constitution. Also in Kenya, Raila Odinga withdraws from the presidential debate, while the police will raid the office allegedly linked to Deputy President William Ruto. But first, we begin in Tunisia, where Tunisians have begun voting in a referendum on a new constitution that critics of the president fear will dismantle the democracy that emerged from a 2011 revolution by handing him nearly total power. The vote is being held on the first anniversary of Kais Saied's ousting of an elected parliament when he established emergency rule and began governing by fiat. Tunisia's divided opposition parties have called his moves a coup that risk a return to the kind of autocratic rule that characterized Tunisia before the 2011 Arab Spring uprisings. Now, joining us this evening from Tunis, the Tunisian capital, is Amin Snoussi, a political analyst. We also have Fadil Al-Zira, a journalist and researcher. Gentlemen, welcome to the conversation.
Hi, thank you for having us.
Yeah, you're welcome. Now, I mean, I would like to start with you. Voting started this morning in Tunisia's constitutional referendum. What has the voter turnout been like?
Well, it seems like the turnout will be disappointing for the president because when you are organizing a referendum, you have to expect at least 50% of participation. Right now, we are very far from it. We are closing in on 12 to 13% to 13% at the half of the day. So it is really an interesting result for Kais Saied, who is massively supported around the country. But people didn't seem to bother to go vote today as much as he wanted to, and that's why he decided today to add 2 more hours to the voting for Tunisians abroad. And this is a move that sounded like he expected more from the turnout today.
Now, I mean, I know it's just 5 p.m. in Tunis, and according to the Electoral Commission, voting should stop around 10 p.m. Tunis time. So we have, give or take, about 5 hours more. Do you think a lot can still change within that time?
Well, in terms of results, I think we are all expecting Kais Saied to win this vote and the Yes campaign to win. But the challenge was really about the participation. A referendum. When you talk about the Brexit, when you talk about the European Constitution in France in 2005, you're expecting half of the electors to turn out and go vote. Now, at least half. Now we are looking at mostly 30% of the population of the electors that will go vote, and that is the challenge that Kais Saied didn't live up to.
Thank you, Amit. Now, Fadil, we've seen this constitution, this referendum that is ongoing for the choice of a new constitution. Is there widespread support among Tunisians for this new constitution? And how was the consultation process for the draft constitution? Do you think Tunisians were adequately carried along?
That's a good question. From the people I've spoken to who want to vote yes, they've said that for the most part they're voting yes, basically to give a mandate to President Kais Saied, or because they feel that this will be the best way to get rid of the political parties that they see have failed them in the last 10 years, who have been governing in parliament in one way or another. So the vote for the people who are voting yes don't seem to be necessarily support for the constitution and the text therein. It seems to be much more really a political message. But of course, that political message may not be last beyond the Constitution. The Constitution may be lasting a little bit more permanently than the message that they're giving. But that's what we're hearing from people who say they're voting yes. It does seem that people who are supporting this president are trying to mobilize. The big question is, will they mobilize enough to really get a yes vote? What we're hearing is likely it will be, but it may be very low participation rate. But like you said, there's a question of what happens in the next 5 hours. There may be a lot that happens in the next 5 hours. As for consultation in the drafting process, I think there's quite a lot of people who have very good criticisms of the drafting process, particularly people who were asked to be part of it and who said that they either declined or who were part of it and then later regretted it because they saw that their input actually wasn't taken into account at all, that this was really something that was written largely by the president.
Now, Fadil, before I move to Amin, could you just explain for the sake of our viewers the technicalities of it? At what point do we know if it is a yes a vote or no vote? Is there a threshold? And how will these votes be counted?
There actually isn't a threshold. So regardless of the participation rate in the vote today, even if it's 10%, obviously it's more than 10% according to the electoral body, but even if it's a very low number, it doesn't seem to affect the legitimacy of the vote according to the president. So he hasn't set himself a certain threshold for participation. At the same time, we have heard the electoral board say that they're going to give initial results at 6 p.m. These are not final results by far, since there's still voting going on, but we should have final results within the next 3 days is what they've said so far. Now, that may be updated depending on what we see in the next 5 hours, if there's any issues with the voting or if there's any sort of other problems they have to deal with, that may get extended. But so far, that's the sort of timeline that we're looking at in terms of when we'll get a result on this. That said, there's also a clause in the Constitution that seems to say that regardless of the result, whether it's a yes or a no, this will be the next constitution. And a lot of people have pointed to that article 139 and 140, two articles actually, and said that's very worrying, that maybe even if the no vote won, that wouldn't count.
So, I mean, why do you even bother with the process in the first place? That brings me to Amin. I mean, the opposition seems to be divided on its approach to this constitutional referendum. Some have called for boycott of the polls, saying that by participating in it, it will only legitimize the process. Others have said, people should go out en masse and vote no. What's the implication for this, for the opposition?
Well, it's really a timeline, because what we described at first is that Kai's regime is a process, and it started a year ago, and there was an opposition since a year ago that said sending the army to close an elected parliament is not possible, is not acceptable. And that is this opposition that is now calling for the boycott. The opposition that is participating in the process and is calling for people to vote no is more of a late opposition that came in around December and January, that was really reacting to how Kais used his coup, his last year coup, and they were expecting more of him, and they were disappointed of how he used this power grabbing and this concentration of power. So there is like two different ways to approach this referendum. People who are saying this is Kais regime and we are opposing every aspect of it, so we cannot participate. And there is people that gave their trust to Kais at first and are now expecting to change the regime from inside by participating in this referendum.
But the implication of this is that either way, Kais is still going to have his way, right?
Well, that's what the constitution says. Actually, the draft constitution that is proposed to the Tunisian people today says that it will be applied after the referendum. There is no precision whatsoever about the yes or the no. I think that with the with the widespread support that Said is having in Tunisia, he didn't even bother to think of the possibility of being rejected by the Tunisian people. And I think that's why there is this boycott movement, because the boycott movement is an ideological sense, but also something of something that looks like giving up. Because when you see the polls and when you see the widespread support, you might not be motivated to go and vote for to go vote no when you are expecting already a large result for the president.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to bring in Fadil. Fadil, critics of this constitutional referendum says it is held to codify President Kaid's godlike powers, and it won't actually change the boundaries of his authority. He's already ruled via almost sultanistic fiat since 25th of July 2021. What do you make of what the critics are saying?
No, I think there's a very fair critique that this is a hyper-presidential constitution with very few checks on the presidential powers. And we even had one of the drafters of the constitution who turned in his draft to the president, a legal scholar, who then turned around and gave an interview when he saw that it had been changed by the president and said this is paving the way for a dictatorial system. Now, that said, I don't believe that the president is ruling alone. He has to use institutions. Now, he doesn't have his own political party, but he certainly is making use of military security forces. And there's, of course, institutions of the state, bureaucracies that he has to work through. There's many ways that the president simply doesn't rule alone. Even under Ben Ali, under a very authoritarian system, the president was not ruling alone. There's different places and points of the state that he has to negotiate with. But it's all going to be happening behind closed doors. So what happens between the presidency, the security forces, and big businessmen, that's not going to have the scrutiny of parliament really anymore. The parliament is much reduced. The role of parliament and the powers of the parliament are much reduced in this new constitution. So I think that's really what we're looking at with this new constitution.
Now, staying with you, Fadil, looking at the background of President Kais Saied as an legal scholar, he's from the academia. Are you surprised at what is happening now?
He certainly is an unpredictable character, let's say that. And he's someone that has surprised observers for a long time. His mode of governing before, from 2019 until last year, July 25th, when he dismissed Parliament, is completely different than how he's governed since then. In fact, he almost proposed no laws to the Parliament. He was very much taking a back seat. Every once in a while, he would sort of use his position to make a speech and criticize the Parliament. And then all of a sudden, we've seen a completely different president. So very, very surprising at that moment, and certainly he can surprise critics and supporters alike in the upcoming period. He's an unpredictable person so far.
Thank you, Fadil. Now, I mean, what's the importance of this constitutional referendum that is happening today, and what does it hold for the future of democracy in Tunisia? And we all know the results as a foregone conclusion, and that this constitution is going to come to pass. So can you still effectively refer to Tunisia as a democracy?
Personally, I would say that we are switching from a democratic regime to an authoritarian regime, because as Fadil just described perfectly, we are putting someone as unpredictable as Kais Saied on top of the administration with no counterpowers whatsoever. So this is something that never happened since 2011. We have no way to control Kais Saied's eventual abuse of power or how he is going to rule. There is no counterpowers whatsoever. Even justice have been reformed. The two chambers of parliament have no effective powers, just really a consultancy role. And the administration, the cabinet, is named and fired by the president. So really, he has the executive power, the legislative power, and he's influencing a lot the judicial power. So this is something that we have never known since 2011, and we are discovering a new regime which looks a lot like
Ben Ali.
Ben Ali's authoritarianism, and that's what frightens observators and political commentators.
But I mean, there's still constitutional term limit, I believe, in this new constitution. And when are the next elections? And today, because this is a permanent document. I mean, you don't change constitutions all the time. And when are elections scheduled to hold in Tunisia, presidential elections?
Well, presidential elections are supposed to happen in 3 years if we count the 2 years that Qaissaid had as president right now. He could start counting from this year and have a presidential election in 5 years. But really, he still has the ability to modify this constitution whenever he wants, and that's what is interesting with this new constitution is that he gives himself the possibility to escape the rules he is setting himself, and that doesn't give you an idea when he will stop, because we can expect him to do a second term, and we can expect him to use any tools he will find at his disposal to grab more power.
Okay. Almost emperor-like powers there. Now, Fadil, talking about constitutional matters, what was the problem and shortcomings of the 2014 post-Tunisian revolutionary constitution, and how does this new constitution differ from the 2014 constitution?
Yeah, Karzai himself had been a long-time critic of the 2014 constitution. He had even criticized the process of writing it way back in 2011 and onwards. He had been a commentator on national TV. This is sort of where he started to have a national profile. He had really seen a problem with the sort of clearly divided executive. There was a divided executive. A lot of people have pointed to that and said that maybe that was a source of issues. Even parliamentarians had said maybe we need to revise that, where there's the head of government that's appointed by the different parties in parliament, and there is the president that's popularly elected, and they have to divide executive powers between them. Now, certainly that led to gridlock. We saw that for sure. We didn't see the naming of a constitutional court, for example, for many years because of parliamentary gridlock as well. So in a way, this is almost fixing some of those problems, but going to the other extreme, basically making sure that there's not only one executive, but that executive also has full legislative and judicial powers as well. So we're seeing sort of the executive swallowing up many of the other roles that you had expected the other branches of government to play if we're assuming sort of a liberal democratic model. He's not playing by a liberal democratic model necessarily. He's talked about ideas that resemble more like council democracy. Other people have brought up the example of the way that Gaddafi ruled in Libya for many years. These are maybe apps. Maybe there's some easy ways to compare them, and maybe that's helpful. But really, it seems that for the moment, since last year, the president has been ruling sort of by decree, and in many ways, this constitution seems to formalize that he'll be able to continue to rule the way he has this last year.
Now, staying with you, Fadil, Tunisia has often been described as the Arab world's most successful democracy, and all of that seems to be fast changing. What is the international community saying about this? I do understand that Tunisia is in a geographic location where you don't exactly have many democracies to compare with. What's the international community saying? What is the African Union, the European Union, and Americans saying about this new constitutional arrangement?
We haven't seen a lot of criticism so far, or not very strong criticism. We've seen some mild criticism from all of these actors. We've seen, I think, the Europeans particularly having maybe less critical language of Kais Saied. I think they've brought up the fact that they would particularly have liked to see Kais Saied go a little faster in terms of having a roadmap, seeing some sort of new system in place, having more clarity about which way the country is going and which way the sort of the political system is going. But other than that, we haven't seen really strong condemnations. It's important to remember that these, even though there's been a celebration of this story of Tunisia's democratic success, there hasn't been, even when there has been human rights abuses in the last 10 years, we haven't seen a lot of sort of condemnation from these groups. So it seems that as long as there is a security cooperation, a lack of migrants going from Tunisia to Europe, these seem to be the most important issues from a European perspective.
Thank you, Fadil. And I mean, what major changes are the voters in Tunisia being asked to approve, and what kind of, I do know that Fadil touched on it a bit, but what kind of political system does this new constitution propose?
Well, it proposes a presidential system, a neutral presidential system, because, as we've just explained, there is no powers besides the president. And it proposes a system where the administration is at the service of the president. Every single part of the administration have more strict rules. We've also seen an ideological shift, because the 2014 constitution was really divided between a close to civil ideology, trying to find the right equilibrium between religion and the state. And now we have seen the Article 5 that was really pointed out by the civil society, that says that the state is responsible for accomplishing the goals of Islam, and that was modified afterwards in the second version. But that was really a talking point for Tunisian, because we were now talking about the fact that the state is at the service of a religion, and that was something that Tunisians never known, actually. Even during the reign of the Islamic Party from 2012 to 2014, and afterwards with the alliances. But we found in this constitution a conservative tone, a strong presidential tone, and really based on interpretation ruling, because law experts said that there was a lot of vague formulations that could allow any president to interpret the constitution however he wants.
Now, staying with you, Amin, I'm happy you talked on the subject of religion. I believe it's Article 1 of this proposed constitutional referendum. The new constitution says Islam will not be, there will be no state religion in Tunisia. Is this move a dig at the opposition Islamist-inspired Ennahda party? What do you make of it?
This move is very interesting because it symbolizes Qais, because he takes off the fact that Islam was in the Article 1 of the 2014 constitution, but he, just by doing that, he changes the narrative. The media were covering the story as the fact that Qais was leaning towards progress and progressism. And then we find the Article 5, where the constitution says that the state should accomplish the goals of Islam. And that is a formulation that is way more conservative than 2014 in the 2014 version. So that symbolizes perfectly the way Qais can maneuver between two opposite ideologies and trying to satisfy everyone, so he doesn't lose any popular votes. And that is something that is very important to understand. Whenever Qais takes a political position, he loses, because he is already very popular, and every time he takes a political stance, he's taking risks. And that's why he tries to avoid it at maximum. He always tries to find scapegoats, such as the parliament, such as the justice, such as the NGOs, such as the media, because it is way easier and it prevents him from losing any voters.
Thank you, Amin. Now, Fadil, just before we begin to wrap things up, when do we expect the results of this constitutional referendum? And if the majority vote yes, and we can already, guess what the result is, when do we expect this new constitution to be in use? When will it be onboarded?
Board even tonight, given the way that the constitutional draft is written, that it will be done after the referendum on the 25th. So it may be immediate, it may be by tonight, even if we don't have full results. We have heard from the electoral body that the preliminary results will be announced within the next hour, and that final results will probably be announced within the next few days. But it's really up to anyone's guess when the new constitution will go into effect. It could be as soon as tonight. But it's very unclear at the moment.
And what's the role of Parliament? Does Parliament not have to endorse this? I do know they're suspended, but in all of this, who else has a say in endorsing this constitution?
It's according to Kais Saied, it's just the people, that the referendum itself he sees as being a more legitimate form of testing the sort of the response of the people. So certainly Parliament, which has not been allowed to meet and has been suspended, will not have a say in this document whatsoever. That said, I mean, the document does include a role for a new Parliament. There will be actually two chambers. There'll be the chamber that we know now, and there'll be one that represents sort of regional assemblies. And the president has said that there'll be elections for those this December. But we still don't have a law. We'll have like a specific law that will set out exactly how these two chambers will look. But this is just sort of the framework is included currently in the current constitution. But other than that, it's just the referendum that we're waiting for, basically to say yes or no. And like we said, maybe not even the results of the referendum count for whether this constitution will come into force or not.
Thank you, Fadil. Lots of moving parts and unanswered questions with regards to Tunisia's democracy, often described as the most successful of such experiments in the Arab world. My question to you as we begin to wrap up, Amin, is this. Is there any hope this new constitution that is giving more power to President Kais Saied will make life better for ordinary Tunisians, because they were tired of the bickering in the old system and, the corruption and all of that. And this man has assumed emperor-like status to himself. So will this translate to a better life for Tunisians?
Well, a better life for Tunisian, I don't know, because what is happening right now is we are just seeing promises. And Kais Saied has promised to fight against corruption, to fight against inequalities, and he promised a lot of very precise things. He promised that the city of Khartoum will become a medical city. He promised some new transport lines, and it has been 2 years. It has been now 2 years and a half since he has been president. We're at the half of his mandate in theory, and we haven't seen any of that. But I don't think that corruption is his battle. I think that corruption is his slogan, because the way he uses the security forces shows that he's just fighting small corruption. And all Tunisian people know that if there is a place where you need to fight corruption, it's in the police, and that is something that is a well-known secret, but the president doesn't seem bothered with the police. He actually uses the police to repress the protests. So I don't think he is fighting corruption, no.
Okay. And at that point, we would like to draw the curtains on this topic. I would like to say a big thank you to you, Amin Snoussi and Fadil Al-Zira, but joining us from the Tunisian capital, Tunis. Do appreciate your insights and contribution to the program. Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
You're watching The Conversation on News Central Television. It's time to switch gears. We will be moving from Tunisia to Kenya, where one of the country's two leading presidential candidates, Raila Odinga, said he will not participate in an upcoming electoral debate. We'll be looking at the political implications of that and many more issues with regards to the upcoming Kenya elections slated for August the 9th. Do stay with us. We'll be right back.